Hello, I am Dr. Soni Kumari from ABES Engineering College, Ghaziabad. In today's session, we will be talking about nested for loop that is part of Unit 2. So let's start. Now, as we have already discussed about the for loop in the previous sessions, now we will see that what is the concept of nested for loop. Nested for loop is called when we use for loop inside for loop. So what basically is the concept of nested for loop? That we are having one for loop and inside that we will be using another for loop. Basically, the concept of nested is itself that if we will talk for nested if else statement, that means if you have one statement, if else statement, and inside that you will have another if statement, if else statement. So that is the concept of your nested loop. So nested loop basically means that so the concept of nested is like you have one for loop and you will have another for loop, or inside that not only we will say another for loop, the correct term is that we will have another for loop inside the for loop. So we will basically have outer and inner for loop when we will talk for the nested for loop concept. So we have outer loop and inner loop. So we call main for loop as outer loop. So the main for loop is called as outer loop and the nested for loop is called inner loop. And if outer loop is running m times, inner loop is running n times, so total iteration is your m into n. For example, your outer for loop is running for 4 times like this one, and inner for loop, that is your nested for loops, you can say it is running for 2 times. So the total number of iterations will be 8. 4 into 2, 8. Now this is the flow chart how for loop, nested for loop work. Like we start and we will check that elements in the sequence of outer loop because we are having here more for loops. So first main loop for loop is called as outer loop, and the nested for loop, that means the loop which is inside the for loop, is called inner loop. So we first it will check the element in the sequence of outer loop. So you should know that first the element is checked in the outer loop and after that it checks the element in sequence in the inner loop, that is inside the loop, and that statement is executed. That statement is executed if there is next element in the inner sequence. So it will check the statement and that it is executed. Once the element no element is left, if once the no element is left in the inner sequence, it will again go for the outer loop. If we found that there is no element in the inner outer loop, it will again go for the outer loop and it will check for that. And if it found that elements in the outer loop, there is no outer elements in the outer loop even, then it will stop. So you should have clear concept that how actually outer loop and inner loop is working here. So what we have observed that first the outer loop will run, and once the outer loop is running, it will check for the inside loop, that is nested loop, and all the elements in the inner loop will be executed. Once the all elements in the inner loop has been covered, it will again move back to the outer loop, and now the it is checking for the elements in the outer loop only. Once the all the elements in the outer loop had been also over, then it will terminate. Now this is the syntax of nested for loop. This is your, of course, main for loop, so it is called outer loop, and this is inside this for loop, so this is called inner loop, or you can also say nested for loop also. Okay, so what is the syntax? The same like we use the for keyword, then the iterative variable, then in, and the sequence one, that is the collection of elements, and this is your outer loop, or you can also say that is this is main for loop. Okay, and after that we have another for loop. Inside that you should follow this like indentations, otherwise it will throw an error. Okay, so you must follow the indentations. uh After that, again say for keyword, another variable in second sequence, and then statements. That means whatever you want to execute. So how it will work? First, it will go for this for loop, okay, and inside that, when the this for loop is completed, like the statement of this for loop is completed, then again it will move for the outer for loop. Like what will happen? First, it will go for this, and then it will go for the inside the inner loop, and the statements or the sequence, it will check for the all the elements in this sequence. Once it has been covered, then it will again move to the outer loop. We will understand this thing in more detail with the examples. You will have clear pictures when we will see the example. So this is basically syntax of a nested for loop, how you write. So you have to keep in mind that the indentation should be followed. Otherwise, it will throw an indentation error. This outer loop is also known as main for loop, and this inner loop you can also call as nested for loops, whatever is in the inside. Now we will have clear understanding with this of nested for loop with this example. Like in this example, we have to use two for loop. Outer loop is running for two values, 0 and 1. Outer value is running for two values, that is 0 and 1. That means outer is for your 0 and 1, and inner loop is running for three values, 0, 1 and 2. Okay, so basically what we are having here, we are having two loop, right? We are having two loop, uh, outer loop, outer loop is for two values, 0 and 1, and inner loop is for three values, 0, 1, comma 2. Okay. And print the statement, we are getting 2 into 3 into 6. Now we will see like with this example, like this is first we are writing outer loop for I in range 2. Why 2? We already know that when we have one argument in range, that means it must be stop value. So we have to see for only 0 and 1, right? We have to see for 0 and 1. And we also know that the stop value is not included. So for that reason, we have to mention here 2, because we have to see for two value 0, comma 1. Now for inner, now we come for inner loop. We have followed the indentations, and in indentation we have 0 and 1, 2. Now again, same thing is that we have to go for 0, 1, 2. We don't need to go for 3. So it has been written 3, because a stop value, we have already seen that stop value is not included, right? If we would have written here range 2, that means it will check for only 0 and 1, because it doesn't go for the the stop value. It does not check for the stop value. Stop value is not included. Now here we have water loop. And we have for j the another variable, and why we have taken range as here argument as 3, and why we have taken argument as 2, I have already mentioned you, I have already explained you. I hope this must be clear to you. Now we are printing the value that in my statement now, and this is the statements for inner loop, right? So print value of I, it will be written as it is, value of I, because it is written in single quotes, comma I. That means whatever the value of I will be, it will be written. Then value of j, again it will be written as same because it is in single quotes, and then value of j. So basically this is the inner loop statement, right? Now how it is working, we will see that. For for this, first it will check for value 0 when we have, like here range 2 means we have, sorry, here we if we have written range, now here you can see we have, now we will start from here, and we can see that range 2 means that we have value 0 comma 1, and so it will check for first value, that is 0. Now for 0 0 again it comes inside this, and for j, and here also the value of j, like 0 1 and 2, it will go till 2. So here also for the first time it have value 0, and now it what it will be print, because value of I is 0, so value of I 0 and j also 0. Now, when it comes inside this, first this loop will be completed, inner loop will be completed. Now, the next value of, when it will go for the next value, the value of outer loop I is 0, so it will be written as 0 only, but the value of j is now 1, so it will be printed that. Now, again, it is in this inside loop only, but the value of I for the outer loop is still 0 here. So it will be printed like this, and value of j is 2. So it will be printed like this. Now this inner loop has been completed here. Like now once it has been completed, again it will go for check for the outer loop, and now the for outer loop we have completed the process of 0. Now we will check for the 1. Now again it will go for the inside loop, and inside we have uh, for j 0. So but value of I is 1 now, because it was from the outer loop. It has been printed, but the value of j is 0. Now again next it will check the value of outer loop is same 1, the value of j increments, and next we have again value of I, that is for outer loop, is 1 only, and the value of j is 2. Now the elements inside this has been completed. It will again move to the outer loop, but in outer loop again the elements has been completed, so it will stop, and this is your, these are the practice exercises for you. First, write a program using for loop to print first and last digit of any number. For example, if you have any number like 2, 3, you have to print first and last digit. So you will be using two for loops, right? Outer for loops and inner loop. You have to use that concept of nested for loop. And second, you write a program using for find factor of any number. You have to find factor of any number using nested for loop. So these are your practice exercise questions. Please do it. Once you do it, you will have more better concept. These are the references which I have referred. Thank you for watching my videos.